More on those stories much later, but first, immigration has been a sensitive issue worldwide and more so here in South Africa, where sensitivities towards immigrants has seen xenophobic attacks by locals. Afrobarometer has done some research on the immigration issue and what people think about government's handling of immigration. To tell us more, we're now joined from Cape Town by Gugu Nonjinge, who's a project leader from the Institute of Justice Reconciliation. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Gugu. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
All right, so Gugu, before we get into the findings itself, tell us a little bit about how the research is done and how you end up getting to these findings.
So Afrobarometer works in 37 African countries, and in the region, South Africa happens to be one of those countries. We're a non-partisan research network. We conduct surveys on areas of governance, economy, the elections, and politics. So some of the questions that we actually ask here in South Africa are questions on tolerance and on immigration and migration in the country. We interviewed about 1,800 adult citizens. We made sure that our sample is nationally representative, and our respondents are asked the questionnaire in a language that is actually comfortable for them.
All right, let's take a look at some of the things that you found out. And the first question, how government is performing in terms of managing immigration. What did you find?
Significant majorities of South Africans or of respondents to the survey actually rate the government negatively on issues of migration and government handling issues of migration and immigration in the country.
What are they concerned about? Do you know?
Majority of them actually are split in some policies that have been put forward in the 2017 white paper on international immigration in the country, and this includes access to economic opportunities, those who seek political protection in the country. So in as much as South Africans are actually rating the government negatively, the data also show that they're quite tolerant of foreigners in the country.
All right. You mentioned tolerance. Let's take a look at, because that was one of the things that you was measured in the Afrobarometer, tolerance towards immigrants and people from other ethnic groups. We're putting up the graphic now. Tell us what it tells us.
So the chart in front of you right now shows that significant proportions of those who responded to the survey are actually tolerant towards having foreigners as neighbors, and also those of different ethnic groups. We didn't disaggregate again this data in terms of which foreigners are South Africans speaking of, but also we take it as an account of the people that are not from the country or are citizens of the country. But it does show that they actually are much more welcoming in having these different groups as neighbors in their communities.
All right, so can we say then, by and large, the majority of South Africans are not xenophobic?
The definition of xenophobia in itself is very broad, so much that we can't focus only on tolerance. There are other things that we need to look into, such as the advancing of policies in the country and also the practices on those policies in the country as well.
All right, so let's go to the next chart, attitudes regarding immigration. And there's quite a lot on this one. Walk us through that.
So the chart on attitudes towards immigration in the country, you see that respondents were asked in terms of should they agree or do they not agree in terms of foreigners should be barred from accessing employment in the country. And you can see that a majority of them actually say that no, foreigners should not be given work in the country. And then again, the last chart, as you can see in the graphic in front of you, it asks if those who are persecuted in their country should be offered some protection in our country. And again, you can see a bit of mix of feelings, but also majorities are still saying that South Africa should not offer this political protection to those who actually seek it and those who are actually fleeing political persecutions from their countries.
All right, so this politically persecuted foreigners deserve protection in South Africa, that's quite close. 48% say no and they strongly disagree. So there is a bit of sensitivity in allowing people to come if they are if they feel persecuted in their own countries?
Definitely, there is a bit of, as I'm saying, the data, it shows that South Africans are actually divided in these policies. And maybe this is something that we need to engage in. When we're looking at the data on those who are actually seeking employment and barring foreigners from entering the country to seek economic opportunities, when we disaggregate the data, you can see that majorities of these people are young people and majorities of them are unemployed. And it is no surprise because then again, unemployment is one of the most important problems rated by Afrobarometer based from the South African data as well.
All right, well, let's talk about employment and legislation that manages whether immigrants are allowed to work or not. And this is an area that you've been looking at. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've observed.
So as I mentioned, the latest data has ranked a number of problems in South Africa that South Africans actually think that the government must look into. The issues of unemployment in the country ranks the first, followed by housing and security. In as much as we're going to the elections and we know most political parties are looking on issues such as land, I think it is high time that the leadership actually takes into account some of these problems that the citizens are putting forward. So the issue of employment and accessing economic opportunities and barring foreigners stems from a very important problem within South Africa, which is the issue of unemployment in the country.
All right, it's not explicit in this report, but I just wonder, are people making a connection, rightly or wrongly, to immigrants and employment opportunities inside the country, so that if I'm a blue-collar worker and I'm looking for a job, am I less likely to get a job because an immigrant is in the country?
No, definitely. I think also that is a homework that our leadership or those in government need to actually take into consideration in terms of unpacking to the citizens that in as much as South Africa benefits from the foreign aid policy and also from international relations, people who come to the country actually advance the country more than anything than taking other people's jobs. And that's, I think, for me, is the groundwork that needs to be done in order to unpack those in rural South Africa, those in urban South Africa, to actually understand it. And I think that's where the issue of xenophobia stems from, is the lack of understanding of these terms and how it implicates on our daily lives.
All right, so when I look to other countries in the world, I look to England, I look to America, which is made of immigrants pretty much. Is there, I don't know, an understanding that sometimes a country can move forward if they have immigrants much quicker than countries that don't?
The latest Afrobarometer Pan-African profile was looking at migration and youth, and we can see that majorities of those who actually leave Africa are young people. However, they leave again seeking employment opportunities and other economic opportunities. And in as much as you'd expect that most of these young people are going to Europe and so forth, they're actually moving around the countries, I mean in the continent, and not necessarily in their regions, but also from different parts of the continent as well. So I think for me that's something that the continent at large needs to look into in terms of the young people are leaving their countries to seek opportunities in different other regions, and that's something maybe that we need to address.
All right, so what recommendations would this report really give to the President, Minister of Home Affairs perhaps, in terms of looking at policy around immigration?
I think for me it would have been that the policies that are being implemented or the policies that are put forward, in as much as the white paper has about 8 areas that it focuses on pertaining immigration in the country, they need to bottle it down so much that the ordinary person or the ordinary South Africans is reflected and views of the ordinary South African are addressed by these policies, and that they are not as high level as they are currently. They need to be broken down and understood by the ordinary citizen.
All right, so Gugu, we're going to have to leave there. Thank you so much indeed for giving us some insights into this interesting research done by Afrobarometer. Thanks so much for your time.